Hi, Justin. Welcome to the Power Talk show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us today. Before we start with the conversation, can you tell us a bit about your professional background and what personal and professional values inspired you to start Hire Tomorrow?
Loaded question. But yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to chat and share. I've got my own podcast, so I'm usually on the other side of the conversation. So it's fun to be on this side. My background has been in recruitment. So I graduated college in 2006, fell right into a very large recruiting firm, and I kind of have not gotten out of it. So I've been doing kind of recruiting or talent acquisition for over 8. I've spent time internally at startups. I've helped very large organizations find and hire people. And then in January of 2020, right before COVID started, I decided to quit a very stable, well paying corporate job as head of recruitment to start Hire Tomorrow. I would not advise anybody to start a recruiting business right before a global pandemic starts. But so that year was not great for a lot of reasons for a lot of people, but from a business perspective was very challenging and happy to talk about that as well. But the why of why I did it was really to have a bit more freedom. So, being in a corporate environment has its pluses, but I think I had an itch to do the entrepreneurial thing and kind of jump out and do my own business. And what better way to do it, or what better industry to do it than something that I already know? And so I decided to jump into the entrepreneurial pool, starting Hire Tomorrow, and we focus working on or working with private equity firms and their portfolio companies. So effectively helping small businesses and startups compete for talent with bigger brands and helping them scale that way.
Wonderful. Thank you for the intro. So, Justin, if you could just highlight me and walk me through what is the model for Hire Tomorrow and how do you differentiate yourself from the traditional recruitment companies out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's not super easy because recruiting is a lot of people have recruiting firms, so there's a ton of us out there, and it is harder and harder to differentiate, mainly because technology has made the access to talent, both available and passive talent, pretty much open to everybody. So LinkedIn is obviously the biggest company around kind of talent and talent networks, and so how I differentiate myself with against other somewhat larger, typically larger companies is I'm typically doing a lot of the work. So my firm is myself. I have a few consultants that I work with. And so when I'm talking to these small businesses who usually have had experiences with other recruiting firms, some of which maybe weren't ultra positive experiences. And so some of those experiences aren't positive because the person that sold them the business, the person that actually talked to them and said, "Hey, we can help you find this person, whatever person they're trying to find," isn't the actual person doing the work. They're not the recruiter. They're taking that requisition, that position, and giving it to a potentially very junior recruiter who doesn't have my level of experience and diverse knowledge of working across startups and Fortune 30 companies and various industries. So I like to differentiate it more on a personal touch. We can probably talk a little bit AI down the road, but the personal touch, the white glove service that I provide every client, whether I'm hiring a CEO or an accountant or a salesperson, the process really doesn't change. And so I like to work one on one with my clients. That's the other reason why I started the business, was because I didn't want to create a massive recruiting firm. I really like the one on one touch that I have. I get to work with a lot of cool CEOs and founders and get to provide my service and help them build their business and grow their business. And it's a lot of fun.
Understood. So, Justin, you spoke about pandemic, COVID. How did it affect, because the current business is basically Mopi business or on site, some are completely online and some are hybrid. How does it affect a recruitment business?
Well, I would say, from a recruiting business, the pandemic pretty much put a stop to most hiring, right? And then once we started to kind of get out the kind of, call it the end of 2020, early 21, then everybody was hiring and trying to figure out how to hire people remotely, onboard them remotely, engage them remotely, build a culture fully remote. And so from my perspective, it opened up a world of opportunity, because a lot of my clients at that point, I was living in Philadelphia. My wife and I moved to Austin, Texas in October of 2020 because she got a job down here and I can do what I do fully remotely, regardless of a pandemic or not. But essentially, my opportunity to work with clients and candidates went from, okay, I need to find people within a, call it, 30-mile radius of Philadelphia or whatever city you're in, to I can now recruit people anywhere in the country, sometimes anywhere in the world, and I can also work with clients anywhere in the country. And so it really kind of was, which is great to have a lot of opportunity and a lot of availability to work with anybody, but as most entrepreneurs know, you need to kind of also be able to narrow down your focus so that you don't try to be everything to everybody, because then you're kind of more of a generalist, and people like kind of more of a, I'm a very specific or very targeted type of service provider. And so it was great, but you have to make sure that you're providing value to the right customers, and maybe not taking on every piece of business that comes your way, because 2021 and 2022, everybody in the recruitment business knows it was very easy to get business. Business was kind of falling off of trees, which was great. Then it was just a challenge of finding the right talent and being able to bring that talent to our clients.
Absolutely understood. How does global economic scenarios work and affect recruitment industry, like the current situation that we have across the world?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that impacts a lot of industries is uncertainty. And so, we're recording this kind of late June, 2025. And so, we're in the middle of tariff country, and everything. Obviously there's kind of quote unquote wars going on, or ceasefires, or whatever you want to call it. And so, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the world and the economy, even though some of the underlying data around unemployment rates are not drastically going up, people are still hiring, people are still changing jobs, and everything. It's just this world of unknown that causes people to kind of wait and see. Right. And so I have a lot of clients that are like, yeah, we'd really like to invest in our company and in our talent, or maybe open up a second office or whatever the case is, but we don't want to outlay a bunch of capital when we don't know what's going to happen, let alone next year, next week, right? And so the uncertainty, because I work a lot with private equity groups, they have a lot of capital that they want and need to deploy to go buy businesses and invest in other companies, but they're also in a wait and see mode because they don't want to invest in a business that may be directly impacted by a change in the tariff stance, or a change in the global economic and political kind of landscape if we do go to a war, or if we do get some type of other conflict that happens. A lot of the people that I talk to, they are hoping that there is some type of certainty or more clarity that they can then start to build plans around. And so, just that world of uncertainty that we're in right now is kind of putting a lot of handcuffs on people, because they just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. AI is, everybody's talking about AI and LLM models, right? I have two parts to this question. So the first part is like, what kind of requests do you get from companies when they request for hiring candidates? And second part, how do you differentiate, the originality of the resumes? And, with this AI modules into place, everybody might be using a similar format. How do you differentiate and how do you identify?
Yeah, those are two loaded questions. I will say, from a requisition standpoint, a lot of my clients, because most of my clients are B2B SaaS businesses, right? And so everybody is trying to implement AI or automation into their product that they are then selling to another organization, right? So a client that I'm working with is a property technology company, and they essentially have a property management software that they are selling. And so I've helped them kind of rebuild or continue to build out their product management department. And now they're like, hey, we really need somebody that has deep experience, and deep is kind of a relative term, but deep experience in implementing or integrating AI into their entire product, right? And so we're getting more and more requests around people that have experience working with AI, not just creating a better email, or creating a sales drip campaign or something like that, but something that's actually looking at AI, and looking at a piece of existing software and saying, how can we help our internal teams automate things, and kind of make their lives a little bit easier? But
Absolutely.
also, how can we put AI into a product that's not just a chatbot, but actually something that's going to help our clients, our end clients, automate or build some efficiency so that their life is easier, right? So those are some of the new and interesting requests that we're getting. And I think in general, another line item that is being added to job descriptions is something around AI or prompting or being able to work with different models. And I don't get super deep in like the kind of AI engineering. I have a few clients that get involved in that, but yeah, we're seeing a lot more AI being asked for in job descriptions, regardless of what position we're recruiting for. I would say, how do you differentiate? And maybe I'll kind of tweak your question a little bit, but how do small businesses, because that's really what I do a lot of work with, how do they leverage AI and also not get lost in the noise, right? And so a lot of people think, and I've been told ever since I started my career, that technology was going to replace my job, essentially make recruiters redundant and not necessary. And while I think AI is probably the biggest opportunity for that to actually happen down the road, the way that AI that I've seen so far that's been implemented for small businesses is, one, candidates can hire an AI bot to apply to jobs, thousands of jobs a day, a week, whatever the case is. And so while as a candidate, you feel cool, I can just put this on autopilot, and this bot is going to go look at my resume, customize my resume and apply to these thousands of positions that I may or may not be qualified for. So you feel really good that you're using AI to help automate your job application process. The problem with that is thousands of millions of people are using it, right? And so now these recruiters or these ATSs, these businesses are getting inundated with resumes that are not necessarily all qualified. And also, some of them are not actually real people at the other end of the resume, which is another big challenge that you kind of mentioned there. So I'm actually being brought in a lot by customers that just can't handle, they don't have the time to sift through. They maybe would usually get 50 to 100 resumes. Now they're getting 2, 3, 400 resumes to the same job description, to the same job posting. And so they're bringing me and my consulting team in to say, how can you help automate or reduce the time that we are wasting on junk candidates, people that are not qualified whatsoever, and make their lives a little bit easier. So it's an interesting dynamic that AI, which should be replacing some of what I do, which it's actually helping me and my company automate things, but it's also making more of a headache for some of my end clients because they're using the traditional post and pray method where you post a job and you pray somebody great applies and you find that person and you hire them, right? And so just making that process a bit more difficult. So I kind of went on a tangent there, but I think, from a summary perspective, like AI, I think will get a lot better over time, which we've already seen it improve drastically in the last few years. I think there's a little bit ways to go from some of the AI tech that I've piloted and that I've done some kind of demos on. And there's also inherent risk for the end client on some of the use cases for AI recruitment bots, essentially.
Are you working on some AI module that you want in future might integrate with Hire Tomorrow?
I'm not creating my own LLM or small language model, if you will, proprietary yet. That's something that I've thought about. Obviously, a lot of the tools that I use have AI built into it or they're adding it now. So I'm leveraging AI and making, again, my process and my life a little bit easier and I can automate some things. It's not perfect yet. It still doesn't sort candidates exactly how I want, but you've got to invest the time to train it correctly to essentially do what I do, but do it while I'm sleeping,
Yeah,
effectively. So
makes sense.
so I think there's a lot of opportunity and there is a little bit of ways to go, but I think in the short term, it is definitely something that recruiters or businesses should leverage as a tool and an efficiency tool, but not blindly just implementing AI just for the sake of implementing some type of AI tool because they feel like they need to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. They should really be thoughtful around what they're implementing, how they're implementing, and invest time to make sure they set up and to train their model or whatever tool they're using to be as efficient as possible.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Justin, can you highlight a few challenges that you face while scaling Hire Tomorrow?
Yeah, I would say because my firm is still relatively small, obviously it's me and a few consultants that I bring in from time to time. I've purposely kept my business consultative because one, I don't take on every search that crosses my desk. I have clients that reach out to me or prospective clients that say, hey, can you help us with this? And maybe it's not aligned with the exact type of client that I want to work with or the type of position that I feel I would be the best resource for them to provide, because I don't take on searches that I don't feel confident that I'm going to be able to fill. So I think the challenge is saying no sometimes as an entrepreneur. You because we're in this world of uncertainty, you need to, if you are really good at a few things or one thing, um, it's hard not to say yes to everything. And sometimes that can be to your detriment because while, yes, revenue is good and all money is green, but you need to make sure that you're not kind of tripping over dollars to pick up pennies and really being thoughtful around how you're going about it. So I've been very intentional that at the start of my business, I wanted to help small businesses. I wanted to work with startups and private equity groups and help the private equity groups protect their investment by hiring great people so that you get a better chance of that business being successful. And also to give small businesses a bit of a competitive advantage that they wouldn't have on their own to make sure that they're finding the right talent for their business. So the challenges for me are just kind of being true to what I want and making sure that I provide a service that I can fall asleep at night and be proud of, for each of my clients.
Understood. One final question, Justin. So if you look back at your journey, what is the one thing that you might have done differently now?
Well, I maybe would have started it not January 2020. However, if I would have waited, so my birthday is in March. So theoretically, if I would have waited until my birthday to say that was going to be my date to quit my job and start my business, I probably wouldn't have, right? Because COVID was a global pandemic at that point. Everybody was locked down, and so I would have probably been way too scared to start the business because I'm a very risk averse person in general, and so my wife and I were very intentional for probably a year and a half to almost 2 years prior to me leaving of kind of setting ourselves up both financially and mentally to take the plunge because as most people know in a marriage, it's not, if one person starts a business, it's not like that person is the only one that is bearing the brunt of the risk and the stress and the pain of starting a business. So luckily I have a very supportive wife, and we went into it with eyes wide open, and we set ourselves up, like I said, both financially and mentally to kind of prepare for anything that could possibly happen. Now, a global pandemic was definitely not on that bingo card. We definitely did not have that on our worst case scenario. I don't think anybody did, but no, I think at the end of the day, I think the things that I maybe would have done differently are I would have maybe hired some more people full time in 2021 when things were great, even though things have kind of softened a little bit. My business is still very busy, which is great, but I know some other recruiting businesses that are a little bit slower. So I maybe would have taken advantage of the boom and really kind of gone all in. But I'm very happy where I am. I love the fact that I can work with, a handful of clients at a time and provide a service that like I said, I'm very proud of. So I wouldn't have done too much differently. There's a lot of thoughts around ifs and buts and maybes that every entrepreneur goes through.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin, for providing your time today. Thank you so much for joining your channel.
Yeah, no, it was great. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.